It started as a quiet Saturday morning. I had just gotten back from a 3-month assignment overseas, hoping for nothing more than a hot shower and some peace in my own home. But instead of calm, I got chaos courtesy of a man who claimed to be security for our HOA. Now, I've dealt with threats before, real ones. But I didn't expect to face one in my own driveway, from a guy flashing a badge he probably printed himself and holding a weapon he clearly wasn't trained to use. He pulled up in a golf cart, wearing a tactical vest that didn't fit and sunglasses, like he was auditioning for a movie. I didn't recognize him, and he definitely didn't know who I was. He kept calling himself the HOA cop, like that title gave him authority over my property. What caught me off guard wasn't just the attitude, but the fact that he pulled out a so-called master key and tried to open my front door. He didn't knock. He didn't ask questions. He just tried to walk in. That's when things escalated. When the key didn't work, he turned around, frustrated, and started accusing me of trespassing. Within seconds, he drew his weapon, yes, an actual gun, aimed it at me, and told me to get on the ground. The irony? He had no idea who he was pointing that gun at. No idea I've been trained for situations far worse. No clue that I was a Navy SEAL who's seen more in one tour than this guy could imagine in a lifetime. I stayed calm, but my instincts kicked in fast. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about something much bigger going on in the neighborhood. And what happened next? That changed everything. I kept my hands where he could see them, but my eyes were locked onto his grip. He was nervous, way too nervous for someone holding a weapon. His fingers twitched. His voice cracked a little as he kept repeating the same lines about HOA authority and how I was refusing to comply. At that point, I wasn't even worried about myself. I was worried that this guy might accidentally pull the trigger just out of fear. That's the kind of danger you don't mess with, not because of his authority, but because he had no control over the situation. Not even over himself. What bothered me even more was how confident he was that he had the right to be there. Like someone gave him permission to act this way. He kept talking about some new HOA policy, saying all unauthorized residents were being checked and homes verified. That's not how HOAs are supposed to work, especially not in a neighborhood like this. We've had annoying rules and nosy board members before, but this felt different, organized, rehearsed even. Almost like he wasn't acting alone. I asked him where he got the master key that set him off. He shouted that it was issued by the board, then tried to radio someone on his walkie, which didn't even seem to be on. No one responded. Not a word. That's when I knew this wasn't official. This was something else entirely, and now I had to figure out what it was. Fast, but before I could say another word, I saw movement across the street. 2 more guys in matching vests stepped out from behind a neighbor's hedge. They weren't just watching, they were listening. And one of them held a clipboard. That's when I realized, this wasn't random. I was being watched, and I wasn't the only one. I stood there, still as stone, pretending like I hadn't noticed the 2 new guys creeping into position. One of them locked eyes with me just for a second, but that was enough. His expression didn't show confusion or concern. It was like he was waiting for something to happen, almost like they were testing me. And that's when I realized this wasn't some overzealous HOA rule enforcement. This felt more like a setup. The guy with the gun was still trying to act in control, pacing now, mumbling into his fake radio. I didn't move, didn't speak. I knew the moment I reacted the wrong way, this whole thing could spiral. But in my head, I was working through every detail. Who sent them? Why target my house the same morning I got back from deployment? And what exactly were they trying to find or keep me from finding? It wasn't the first time something about the HOA had felt off. A few months back, one of my neighbors, Carla mentioned she'd seen a group of guys go into her backyard without warning. Said they claimed they were doing code checks, but she never saw them again after she filed a complaint. Her cameras went missing 2 days later. At the time, I chalked it up to paranoia. Now, I wasn't so sure. And then there was Jory-tired firefighter, lives 3 doors down. He'd told me once that the new HOA president had connections too. Some private security firm. Said the guy was ex-law enforcement but got pushed out for tactical overreach. Whatever that meant. Joe tried to look into it, but 2 weeks later, his shed burned down in the middle of the night. No investigation, just a quick cleanup and a quiet HOA meeting afterward. Now standing here, with a gun pointed at me and 2 silent watchers across the street, it all started lining up. This wasn't about rules or security. This was something buried deeper in the neighborhood, and I had just stepped straight into the middle of it. I knew I had to stay cool. Any sudden move, any wrong word, and things could snap fast. The fake HOA cop was still pacing, muttering to himself like he was trying to convince even his own brain that he was in control. But it was clear he wasn't. I'd seen men like this before, guys playing dress up in authority, hiding fear behind aggression. And usually, they're the most dangerous type. The 2 men across the street started to move in. Not fast, but purposeful, like they didn't want to draw attention, but they were definitely closing the distance. One of them tapped his clipboard like it was part of some checklist. My name, my house. I couldn't be sure, but their focus was locked in. I started piecing it together in my head. This wasn't a random visit. They knew I'd just returned. Maybe they didn't expect me back this early, or maybe they were counting on me not being home at all. Then came the sound that made every muscle in my body tense up. A second walkie crackled from behind the fake cop. This one was live. A calm voice said, "Unit 3, status check. You need backup." That voice didn't sound like HOA at all. It sounded like someone used to giving orders quietly, controlled, trained. And whoever it was, they were close. I scanned the area quickly. The street was too quiet. No neighbors out. No cars moving. Even the usual dog walkers were gone. It felt staged, like the whole block had been cleared, like they were waiting for something to go down. The guy in the vest glanced toward the voice, hesitated, then tightened his grip on the gun. That's when I saw the small camera clipped to the side of his sunglasses. Not a GoPro. Something smaller, discreet, recording everything. That explained the weird behavior. This was being watched in real time. I shifted my stance just a little. Not enough to spook him, but enough to be ready. Because if they were recording this, it meant they wanted a reaction, maybe even a confrontation. And they were seconds away from getting one, before I could react. Another voice chimed in, this time not from a radio, but from behind me. A calm, steady voice I hadn't heard in years. "Stand down, Travis. He's not your target." I turned slightly, just enough to glimpse the figure stepping out of the shadows from my side yard. My heart skipped. It was someone I served with, Mason, a guy I hadn't seen since we both left the teams. Someone who disappeared off the radar years ago after a mission that didn't go clean. The fake HOA cop froze, the tension in his shoulders giving him away instantly. He wasn't just some wannabe rent-a-cop. He knew Mason, and not in a friendly way. Travis lowered the weapon only, slightly, but the damage was done. My mind was racing now. If Mason was here, and these guys knew him, this wasn't just some HOA gone rogue. This was tied to something deeper, something personal. Mason stepped closer and nodded toward the men across the street. "They're not just HOA security," he said under his breath. "They're contractors, same crew we ran into in Korengal. Different uniforms, same methods. That hit hard. We'd had a messy run-in overseas with a private security firm known for dirty tactics, black bag stuff. The kind of group that worked off the books with no oversight and a lot of silence behind them. And now they were on my street. That clipboard, the camera, the cleared neighborhood, it all made a twisted kind of sense now. They weren't looking to enforce HOA rules. They were collecting intel. And I had something or knew, something they wanted. Maybe it was connected to what we uncovered during that last deployment. Maybe it had followed us home. Mason leaned in and said one more thing that changed everything. They're not here. For your house, they're here because of what's under it. My blood ran cold. Because whatever was buried beneath my property wasn't put there by me, and it clearly wasn't meant to be found. Everything clicked at once. I looked at Mason, then back at Travis, who was still holding the gun, barely. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from realizing the situation was no longer in his control. The two guys across the street stopped in their tracks as Mason slowly stepped forward, hands up, calm but firm. "You're out of time," he said. We both know this wasn't supposed to get loud. That's when a low rumble echoed from beneath the ground. It wasn't an earthquake. It was mechanical, controlled. Mason glanced at me. "They've already triggered the vault," he muttered. "They're not waiting for you to hand over anything. They're digging it out themselves." I didn't even know there was a vault under my property, but apparently someone else had known for years. And now they weren't hiding it anymore. I ran around to the backyard. That's when I saw it. A section of my lawn had collapsed inward, exposing a narrow tunnel about 6 feet wide. There were fresh tool marks on the edge, like it had just been broken open from underneath. A portable winch was set up beside it, connected to a black SUV parked along the alley. They were planning to extract something big, something heavy. Mason followed, gun drawn now, his tone shifting from calm to urgent. "Whatever's down there, it's not just data, it's physical. Something's sealed off since before you even bought this place." Before we could move, one of the men from across the street shouted, "You're too late," and dropped the clipboard, revealing a hidden detonator underneath. My stomach dropped. But instead of triggering an explosion, he hit the switch and all power in the neighborhood went out. Lights, cameras, even cell signals died instantly. We were in a blackout zone. But the real twist, in the silence, a second hatch one we didn't know about opened from beneath the collapsed tunnel. And someone climbed out. Not one of them. Not one of us. Someone we both recognized from that mission years ago. Someone who was supposed to be dead. The man who stepped out of the hatch was Jackson, our old intel tech, who went missing in action 3 years ago. Everyone assumed he died overseas. But there he was, pale, thinner eyes, sunken but sharp. He looked straight at Mason, then me, and just said, "They lied to all of us." The blackout hadn't just shut down power. It had isolated the areas, sealed it off from outside signals, so no one could call for help or leak what was happening. Whatever was under that house, Jackson had been down there guarding it, or trapped by it. Turns out, after one of our last missions, Jackson uncovered files, classified logs tied to private contractors working both sides of conflict zones. Stuff that wasn't meant to see daylight. He stored it in a secure vault and disappeared to keep it safe. The land above it eventually sold. Right to me, without me knowing a thing. Mason and I helped him out. The HOA team started to back off once they realized Jackson was alive and had direct evidence that could ruin more than just reputations. We handed over everything to the right federal contacts off the record. No news, no headlines, just a quiet cleanup. Within a week, the fake HOA dissolved, the contractors vanished, and the board president moved out overnight. My neighborhood's calm again, at least on the surface. But I still watch the cameras a little closer now. And I've reinforced the property line with my own security. Legally, nothing flashy. Because sometimes the danger doesn't come from across the world. Sometimes it's hiding behind a fake badge, a golf cart, and a clipboard. If there's one thing this taught me, it's this. Always trust your gut, especially when someone tells you they have a master key to your home.